So the Ryzen 2000 series processors and new X470 motherboards launched yesterday, barely? You'd think that here at the UFD Tech HQ, we'd have our Ryzen fill, and then some, but you'd be dead wrong, Johnny. While the 2600, 2700, and their Xified version certainly seem to be great value chips, boasting significant improvements over the Ryzen 1 brethrens, and even be slightly competitive with Coffee Lake, the Ryzen 2000 lineup feels a little incomplete. Where's the 2800X AMD? Where are the budget options for those of us who don't want to spend $200 and up to join in on the fresh new Ryzen 2 action? AMD, where are the rest of the chips? AMD? Okay, I know I just sound like my one aunt who doesn't want me to gain weight, even though I put on 20 pounds while I was in the States in less than 2 months. I had a problem with eating everything in my sight, but anyways, obviously AMD won't be talking about the rest of the Pinnacle Ridge lineup until they're good and ready, but that doesn't mean we can't start buying tickets for the speculation train. All aboard. Where's the 2800X? Our first stop on this chip speculation tour should be the 2800X. After all, last year the 1800X launched alongside its Ryzen 7 siblings, but there hasn't been any whisper about the existence of the 2800X so far besides rumors. So why is that? Well, there are a few possible answers to that question. The first is that AMD doesn't have a 2800X in the works. Simple as that. The 2700X might be as good as it gets for Pinnacle Ridge and its 12nm process. Last year when the first gen Ryzen 7 chips launched, it didn't take enthusiasts long enough to figure out that a large majority of 1700 and 1700X chips could hit the same 4 GHz boost clock as the 1800X with minimal effort and a lot less cache. This made it almost impossible to recommend buying an 1800X and to a lesser extent the 1700X. So maybe AMD learned their lesson somewhat and decided not to add another SKU into the mix that offers an extremely minimal advantage, if any, and especially since they're including box coolers with everything. Like the 2700X has better value, but we don't need, like, what kind of frequency would we get with the 2800X? I don't even know. But another far more interesting theory doing the rounds is that AMD is saving the best for last. If you haven't had the chance to visit the CPU rumor mill over the last few weeks, you may have missed the rumors pointing up to Intel gearing to release an 8-core 16-thread Coffee Lake processor. Processor is the word I'm looking for there. While most of those rumors seem about as credible as any other rumor, more recent information taken from an official Intel technical doc seems to confirm that just such a processor is indeed on the way. There's little reason to doubt that AMD has long suspected and anticipated such a move from Intel, and maybe, just maybe, they're keeping the 2800X under wraps until they've seen what Intel actually comes up with. All of that being said, if the 2800X is the thing that's on the way, when could we be getting our hands on it? What might it cost? And more importantly, how powerful could it be? Well, we don't know, but we're betting that if it does exist, it'll likely only release sometime after the Intel details their 8-core behemoth, and that seems to be likely June 8th is the time frame I was getting on that, so Computex likely. And as for the two other questions, let's take a look at last gen's chip to get a better idea. The 1800X was originally priced at $499 and featured a max boost clock of 4 gigs. The 1700X, on the other hand, came in at $400, sporting a max boost clock of 3.8 gigahertz. Doing the math there, the 1800X was $100 more expensive than the 1700X. I can't believe I did that math so quickly and was able to push around an extra 200 megahertz more out of its core. Applying the same logic to the 2700X, we could expect the 2800X to come in at around $429 and boasting max boost clock of 4.5 gigs. That would make it quite a formidable foe to even an 8-core Coffee Lake chip. And while that would be quite the sight to behold, what about more budget-friendly 2000 series chips? Cheap chips or get the frick out. As we know, the new 2000 series chips almost have the entirety of the Ryzen 7 and a good chunk of the higher-end Ryzen 5 lineup covered with the 2600X and the 2700X. But what about the rest? Aren't we missing a 2300X and a 2500X in there somewhere over the radar? Well, just like before, we have a few theories, and also like before, we'll start out with this one. They're not coming, and they don't need to. You see, the Ryzen Pinnacle Ridge CPUs AMD just dropped make a lot of sense. They're significantly faster than their first-gen counterparts and are priced well below what they were when they first came out last year. Now, know what else cost less and offered a lot more than the chips they replaced? That's right, the Ryzen 3 2200G and the Ryzen 5 2400G. When these two chips launched back in February, they effectively replaced every first-gen Ryzen chip from the 1500X to the 1200. The 2200G booted the 1200 and 1300X out of the picture by featuring similar or higher clock speeds, integrated Vega graphics, and costing less than them when they first launched. The 2400G did the same with the 1400 and the 1500X, but booted those even harder thanks to its beefy GPU and an impressive 3.9 gigs max boost clock. With all of that in mind, as well as the fact that we're only about 3 months into the life cycle of those APUs, it's hard to imagine that any Ryzen 3 or more Ryzen 5 Pinnacle Ridge processors could be on the way. But let's say that AMD is planning on launching something like the 2300X or 2500X moving forward. If that's the case, when could they see the light of day? When the first gen Ryzen parts rolled around, the Ryzen 7 chips were first in line, launching on the 2nd of March last year. A month later, on the 11th of April, we saw the launch of the entirety of the Ryzen 5 lineup. And then after that, the 1200 launched on June 29th and the 1300X popped up on July 27th. If AMD follows the same roadmap as before, we could expect to see a 2500X sometime next month in May and a 2300X between 3 to 4 months later. Unfortunately, even speculating on a price for these chips is a pretty tough call, primarily because we put them at around the same prices as the 2200G and the 2400G, give or take 10 bucks. Which just adds to our skepticism about them existing. Similarly, trying to guess clock speeds is also a little tough. From what we've seen so far, Pinnacle Ridge offers between a 200 to 500 megahertz clock speed bump over their first gen counterparts, and that's a lot of wiggle room. But if we had to guess, a max boost of 3.9 gigs on a 2300X and 4 to 4.1 gigs on a 2500X probably wouldn't be too much of a stretch. So here's the conclusion. We know nothing. Now, if it wasn't already abundantly clear, all of this is speculation at this point. We don't know when more budget-friendly Pinnacle Ridge CPUs could come into play, what they'll cost, and what sort of extra performance they'll bring, or even if they exist at all. If they do exist, AMD is being phenomenally tight-lipped about the whole thing, so tight-lipped that it's hard to imagine these chips are real. Before the launch of current Pinnacle Ridge lineup, we already had a pretty good idea of what to expect thanks to leaks and credible rumors, but in this case, the only chip anyone is talking about is the 2800X as far as rumors go, and the existence of even that chip seems a little unlikely. While it would be great to see more 2000 series SKUs coming out in the following months, offering significantly higher clock speeds at decent prices, we actually don't see the point. The 2700 and 2700X came in to replace all of the current 8-core Ryzen parts, while the 2600 and 2600X came in to take the 6-core crown. All that's left is the 4-core and the 4-core 8-thread Ryzen lineups, and the 2200 and 2400G look to have those pretty much covered. What isn't covered yet is, however, is Threadripper. That was a weird way of saying it, but now Pinnacle Ridge Threadripper parts are worth getting excited about, and AMD actually talked about them at CES, so we should expect them around the August to October timeframe, somewhere in there, about Q3, Q4. Is what they indicated is when they're supposed to come out. So the Ryzen 2700X offers a lot. It has high clock speeds, great performance, a good cooler included that's RGB ready, translucent fans so that it's actually beautiful. There's a whole lot to go for it. But as we mentioned, the Ryzen 3 chips not existing might not be such a bad idea. I'm at the place where I could actually see that happening, but at the same time, if Intel just launched their Coffee Lake lineup of the lower end SKUs, they added like 2 to 3 parts for i3 and i5, so we have more than just the 6 parts that they gave us. So segmentation in the lower end market has increased since Intel dropped their Coffee Lake stuff. What was that, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? My life is crazy. I have no idea at this moment. But we got more Coffee Lake stuff. And so it could be that AMD is just going to stick with the CPUs that work, or alternatively, they will see that there is a need for greater segmentation, and it probably won't be too hard for them to cut down the cores, cut down the threads, and actually just release chips that could do 4.3 gigahertz when you overclock them, which is one of the added benefits that you get with AMD over Intel at this point, is that if you're buying an i3-8100, sure, you're getting all of that you need there, but you don't have overclocking, whereas if you got a Ryzen 3 2200 non-G, you can still overclock that and you get a better performance. And the issue that I do have with the idea that the 2200G and the 2400G are replacing the first gen, or they're replacing the lower end Ryzen 5 and Ryzen 3 lineups, is the fact that they're not as good on the core clock. You're basically only getting 4 gigahertz out of them, and whereas the new Ryzen 2 series actually does have better CPU performance, but it doesn't appear that the APUs actually offered better CPU performance. They just included in integrated graphics, and we don't have much else beside that. But with that being said, I want to know what you all think. What are your thoughts on the Ryzen 2 lineup? What are your thoughts on Ryzen 3? Part of Ryzen 2, let's call it the 2000 series, even though it's technically Ryzen 2 confirmed by Mama Sue herself. Not the point. So Ryzen 3, Ryzen 5, what are you guys thinking? Have you heard any information that we may have missed at this point? Where are you at? Let me know down in the comments. Let's chat about it there. Be sure to smash the like button if you enjoyed this video regarding the upcoming Ryzen 2000 series chips. Be sure to get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech-related content. And if you're buying new stuff, new CPUs, new GPUs, everything that new RAM for a new Ryzen system, such as this one, you can use our Amazon affiliate code that's in the video description. It doesn't cost you an extra cent, but gives us a small kickback. That helps us out a lot. And with that being said, I am so gloriously excited to be back in South Africa. This is like one of the first times that I have recorded a video in the same location for 3 times in a row. Yeah, 3 videos in a row in the same old place, good studio. I'm excited. We got a lot of exciting things coming up for UFD Tech, a lot of great plans. I just needed the time and the space to actually be able to sit down and work on them because the road trip all over the United States was super crazy, super hectic. And yeah, this should hopefully allow for greater and better things to come up. And you know, let's march forward to 1 million subs. Let's do it. All right, I'm Brett with the UFD Tech channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Cheers.